Jimmy Carter.
Good evening. 22 months ago, when I began my campaign, I was a lonely candidate. I walked the streets, went into private homes, saw one person at the time, at the most 3 or 4. But when the returns came in from the early primaries, we had won. And the reason was, and it surprised a lot of people, I had a close, personal, individual, direct relationship with the people of this country in New Hampshire and Florida and North Carolina and Illinois. And that's a kind of relationship that was disturbed as we did win. We had larger crowds, Secret Service, a lot of news people between me and the people of this country. Tonight is an opportunity at the last moment of the campaign to let the American people see again individual Americans the way I see them, people in families, sometimes unemployed, sometimes elderly, sometimes concerned about the image of our country, just in a direct person-to-person relationship with me, a man who hopes to be the next president of our country. Hope you enjoy the show. And it's going to be untarnished and direct and unrehearsed, a good presentation of the proper relationship between the future president and the people that he hopes to serve.
I'm going to go to the ballot box. I'm going to cast my ballot for all the resolutions, propositions, all of the candidates that are running for the various offices, except I will not vote for anybody for president.
I don't really think there's any choice between Carter and Ford. I wouldn't vote for Ford simply because he pardoned Nixon, period. I just wouldn't vote for the man. Really, the debates were meaningless. The people skirted the issues, and that's why people walk around. They're dazed out, man. They don't know who to vote for because they have no choice. That's the way I feel about it.
People are apathetic than ever. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to stay home. And that's not going to prove anything.
Well, I can understand the attitude of these people and millions of others around our country who've been deeply hurt in the last 8 years, who've been disillusioned and disappointed and alienated, who've been embarrassed and sometimes even ashamed of our own government. With high unemployment and high inflation and grossly unbalanced budgets and a drifting nation and a lack of pride and a violation of the law among the higher officials of our country. The fact is that the problem is not that people have lost confidence in the government. The problem is that public officials, once they got in office, lost confidence and trust in the people who put them there. Tonight we're going to be discussing some of the things on this program that show that a president, a governor, a member of Congress, a mayor, can't solve these problems, which are difficult, without the full participation and encouragement and involvement, without the hopes and the dreams of American people. And when the election comes on November the 2nd, the responsibility will be yours, the people of America. If I'm elected president, then January the 20th, the responsibility will be mine and yours. But let's don't give up on our country, on its government, just because we've been embarrassed or ashamed or disappointed in the past. Americans have never done this. We've been tough. And really our strength has come forward in the most vivid way when the difficulties were greatest, like they are now. We can change things, but we've got to do it together, all of us.
With the United States not being involved in any wars whatsoever, what would be his initial steps in creating a thriving economy?
What can you do if you're elected president to bring up the economy of this country and get us out of this recession?
Food prices are high, the gas. It's really hard with children. You have to, plus my husband's the only one working. I can't work. So it's rough.
How far more prices can go up for average people with average income? What could a change in government really bring?
The economy, I believe, it needs to be changed more than anything else. And it's been kind of bad for the past 10, 12 years. And I kind of feel like it's only kind of Republicans that's been in office. I think it's about time for the Democrats to have no shot at it.
This is a question I get more than any other question around the country. This Republican administration has been absolutely terrible. They brought us the first $200 billion budget, the first $300 billion budget, the first $400 billion budget, the highest deficits in the history of our country, the highest combination unemployment and inflation that we've ever seen since our country was founded. The statistics are terrible. In the last 2 years, we've had 2.5 million more people become unemployed. In the last 4 months alone, 500,000 American families have become unemployed. But the most important thing is that these are people, human beings, families, and it's a devastating blow to a person who's able to work, not to be able to work. The Republicans have always felt that the best way to control inflation is people out of a job. So our top priority has got to be to put our people back to work. We'll never have a balanced budget, which I intend to see. We'll never have an end to the inflationary spiral as long as we have 7.5 or 8 million people out of work who are looking for jobs. There are many things that can be done. Our housing industry needs to be stimulated. It won't cost much money, but we'll put enormous numbers of people back in homes and also back to work. Research and development funds, pollution control, transportation. The emphasis has got to be in the private sector. Government jobs as a last resort, but as a main thrust, people having a right to work in private jobs, permanent jobs, where the taxpayers' money doesn't have to be involved very much. But the emphasis has got to be on restoration of people's right to work.
Okay, Mr. Carter, I'm a sailor, and I can't get a job. No,
More than half of my friends and acquaintances are out of work and have been out of work for a period of time, which leaves them out of the statistics.
Mr. Carter, I'm worried about unemployment in general.
How is Jimmy Carter going to be able to offer more jobs through government programs without escalating the economy?
And I'm very curious to know what I hope President Carter will do in the way of unemployment.
Well, I've met people like these all over the country in the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, 1/3 of all the families in this country have experienced unemployment recently. That's bad enough on people that don't have jobs. But one thing that we tend to forget is that the ones who still have jobs are the ones who pay the bills. Every time our unemployment rate goes up 1%, then the government loses $16 billion in welfare payments and in unemployment compensation. In the last 2 years alone, since Richard Nixon left office, we've added $23 billion to the cost of unemployment compensation and welfare payments. And the one that pays the bill is the American who's still at work. That's where the relief needs to come. It's not going to be easy, but if government and business and industry and labor and agriculture and education and all the entities in our society can work together, we can start making progress. And as we cut down the unemployment rate, it'll help everybody. That's what I intend to do.
Governor Carter, my question is, what do you intend doing about the mess we have in the welfare program?
Well, we now have 12 million people in this country who are permanently on welfare. 10% of them, about 1.3 million, are fully able to work full-time. They ought to be taken out of the welfare system altogether and placed under the responsibility of the Labor Department, Education Department, given job training, literacy instruction if they can't read and write. The services of private and public job placement agencies matched with a job, offered a job. If they offer a job and don't take it, I wouldn't pay them any more benefits. The other 90% need to be treated fairly, but we've got about 100 different welfare programs. The present welfare system is both anti-work and anti-family. It's time for a change in the welfare system. Have a simple system that treats people fairly, yes, but it ought to be designed pro-work, pro-family.
Mr. Carter, I would like to know how you are going to cut the taxes, as you say that you are going to cut when you become states.
I'd like to have a little bit more information about how he's going to put into effect the tax cuts that he's recommended.
My question to Governor Carter would be how he would make taxes fair for everyone.
All I can say is, what about the guy with a wife and 3 or 4 children? Has to support him. He needs that break in taxes. He has to educate the children. He's got clothing, food. With inflation what it is, by the time you get done buying your groceries, paying your rent, boy, you're really hurting if you're not making a whole lot of money.
I've heard that you're considering removing the exemption on interest payments for home mortgages. Is that a true position of yours, or is that something that the Ford camp is just pumping out?
Well, I want to answer Bob Gary's question first about home mortgages. That is not my position. That's just something the Republicans are using to distort my position and try to gain votes in an improper way. I would never increase taxes on the homeowner who's been using the deduction of his interest payments on mortgages. Now, taxes is a serious question with the American people. American people don't mind paying their taxes if they feel that it's fair. But the present income tax structure is not fair. It's a disgrace. The surest income to be taxed is the income earned from manual labor. There are not any hidden secret loopholes for someone who draws a paycheck every 2 weeks or a retirement check every 2 weeks. But there are hidden secret loopholes for all the big shots, the special interest groups, and that's got to stop. In the last reporting period, there were over 800 people in this country that made more than $100,000 a year and paid no income taxes. There were 11 corporations supported and friends of the Republicans who made over $100 million on the average in 1 year and paid not a nickel in income tax. And when they don't pay their taxes, do you know who pays it for them? The average working American family in this country. Now, if we can remove the loopholes and just have a fair and simple tax system, we can reduce taxes for the low and middle income families. The American people are ready for this change. The Congress is ready for this change. And I'm ready for the change. And next year we're going to have comprehensive tax reform to make our income tax structure fair for a change.
Ford has vetoed several things on senior citizens, and I don't think it's right. I'm sure he's got a mother, and he would want her to be taken care of, but he doesn't care about anybody else's.
Living on Social Security, I'm all right because I managed to save a little money. But I think if people were making, I'd say the average person, these older people that started to collect Social Security earlier, that are getting minimum payments, I don't see how they can do it with the cost of living.
I'm a social worker. I have been for a long, long time, and I don't work in the welfare system. I work with the elderly. And you can't see people who spend, all their lives doing the prescribed thing and then lose their homes because they can't pay their medical bills and have nothing. And they never deviated. They voted, they paid their rents, they bought the little house, they paid off the mortgage, they own the place free and clear, and then they have to sell it. And there isn't even enough subsidized housing for them to move into something else.
I get to be the age to draw Social Security. Will there be any left?
Well, my mother, Lillian, is 78 years old, and Rosen's mother is over 70 also. And they never let us forget about the special problems of the elderly people of this country. There's a deep concern, and I think a legitimate concern, about the future stability and soundness of a Social Security system among those that are paying Social Security now who are quite young, and among those who are old and who are depending on it for their security in the years to come. We must have confidence restored in government, in particular Social Security. And we must have an assurance that never changes, that when the inflationary costs go up, the Social Security payments will go up enough to take care of it. This is something that's so important to our people who've worked all their lives, who have a lot to offer. I want to be sure that when I'm president, that within the White House, at my shoulder, will be a full-time counselor just speaking up for elderly people, so that every time I make a decision about housing, Social Security, taxation, welfare, health care, transportation, I never forget the fine, retired people of our country who've already given so much to make America great, and who still have a lot to offer.
I think the overall situation in the United States, I think other countries are looking at us, with a sort of down attitude.
I think it stinks the way it is right now. I wonder if he becomes president, if he's going to try to cut down on some of the overseas spending with the other nations, the billions and billions of dollars that go over there, see if he can do something with our own government.
Another thing that concerns me, Bob, is the two major grain deals with the Russians. The grain that was purchased at $1.55 a bushel or $2.55 a bushel, and then resold back to the United States or else on the world market for at least $1 per bushel increase in cost. This is the thing I just can't understand, how we can be giving our grain and our grain supplies. Why can't we use this as a lever instead of armaments and selling armaments? Why don't we sell our crops?
What substantial way do you differ from President Ford as far as foreign policy is concerned?
These are the kind of questions that I've had all over the country about our foreign policy. How would we change it specifically? Well, one is, I think in the field of foreign policy, that the president ought to be the spokesman for our country and not the Secretary of State. Also, every time we've made a serious mistake in foreign affairs, it's been because the American people have been excluded from the process. We need to return to the proposition that the president and the Congress and the people ought to understand and make decisions on foreign affairs. Another thing that we need to do is to make sure that in the field of foreign aid, we want to be humanitarian about it. But I'm tired of seeing the poor people in this rich country taxed and the money sent to the rich people in the poor countries. As far as the grain sale to the Russians is concerned, that was a terrible mistake. But President Ford has compounded the mistake lately by having 3 different grain embargoes, which has robbed the farmers, at the same time has seriously hurt the consumers of this country. So we need to have an open foreign policy, understood and supported by the people and the Congress, with the president expressing accurately the moral tone and the ideals and commitments and the character of the American people. We ought to have a foreign policy once again to make us proud and not ashamed. And through these specific changes, we can have that kind of foreign policy in the years to come.
I'd like to know how much Governor Carter planned to cut the defense budget.
I was in the Navy for 11 years. I am a graduate of the Naval Academy and served as a submarine officer. And I've seen the terrible waste in the Defense Department. Also, I've been governor for 4 years, and I've seen the waste in the social programs. I intend to be tough on both of them. The number one responsibility of a president, above everything else, is to guarantee the security of our country, a freedom from the fear of successful attack or blackmail and an ability to carry out a foreign policy. But I'm in the peculiar position in debating with my opponent that I'm trying to cut out waste, and he's defending waste. We estimate that we can save $5 to $7 billion just by proper management. I'll give you just 2 or 3 quick examples. The average service family now stays on a post only 15 months. If we could just increase the time of service in one place to 18 months, we could save over $1.5 billion. We now have only 2 students for every instructor in the military. High schools and colleges have 15 to 20. If we could just increase to 3 students for every instructor, we could save more than another $500 million. We could standardize our weapons in NATO alone in Europe and save our country $2 billion. So we need to have tough management in domestic and foreign affairs, maintaining a strong defense at all times. That's number one. But also giving our people proper services. It's not going to be easy. But I've had enough experience, and I understand the American people well enough and the system of government to know that working together, we can have both.
Governor Carter, if I had a chance to meet you face to face, I'd sure like to tell you to straighten up this country after you get to be president and get this crime and viciousness off of the streets, especially the hard dope.
But the most which I'm personally concerned, and as well as every American, is the narcotic problems, which I doubt that the next president of the United States would have the guts to take any precautions.
Mr. Carter, I would like to know what you're going to do about crime in the streets. It seems to be the most important issue as far as New Yorkers are concerned, and I hope you come up with a good solution.
Crime is one of the major concerns of our people all over this country, and particularly in the urban downtown areas, where it's grown by leaps and bounds. Our criminal justice system is just not working. The constant delays in bringing a criminal to trial and conviction and getting them off the street really concerns me and everyone else. When I became governor of Georgia, there was a man who had been indicted 52 times, primarily for drug charges. He had never served a single day in jail. And not until I put pressure to the public opinion, and until a young person died in the drug pusher's home from an overdose of heroin, did that criminal ever spend his first day in prison. We also have a dual system of justice. For those who are powerful and influential, they never go to prison. But the average American family member faces tough penalties if they do commit a crime. Let's take drugs as a specific example of what is causing a lot of crime and where we can do something about it. During the Vietnam War period, a lot of our heroin came from the Far East. but now 90% of it comes from Mexico. And with close cooperation between ourselves and the Mexican government, through infrared photography, we can identify the poppy fields where the heroin is produced and cut down drastically on the inflow of heroin to our country. We've got to also set a good example at the top. In recent years, our government has been disgraced. We've had 2 attorney generals convicted of serious crimes, and we've seen a president of the United States and a vice president of the United States resign from their high office in disgrace. So from the top all the way down to the bottom, we can have a more effective way through cooperation and deep commitment to cut down on the crime rate in this country. I'm determined to do that if I'm elected.
Mr. Carter, I'm really concerned about food, and as a family man, I'd like to know what effect your administration will have on the cost of food in the market.
Every so often I hear a comment in the news that the government is saying there's good news for consumers. Food prices are going to go down because farm prices are down. And I know people that are raising cattle that tell me right now they're losing $100 every time they sell one. And they're going broke. And I wonder if people really understand that if all the farmers go broke, we won't have anybody to feed us.
What the farmers would like to know is what our new administration would do for them. Everybody promises the farmers the world. We know the farmers, the backbone of the nation, but we want to know what you can do for us. Everybody knows what we can do for you.
Well, I know that the price of food has gone sky high. As a matter of fact, in the last 8 years, things like sugar and bacon have gone up more than 100%. But as a farmer, I know that it hasn't helped us. We've seen farm prices go down drastically. Wheat prices now about half what they were a year ago. And it's absolutely correct that cattle ranchers are now losing $50 to $100 every cow. As a matter of fact, the farmers are going broke trying to produce food that the consumers can't afford to buy. We need a comprehensive agricultural policy, maximum production. We also need maximum exports, which help us all. We need to have in the White House and the Secretary of Agriculture's office someone who understands that what's best for the family farmer in the long run is exactly what's best for the consumer. Stable production, stable prices. This will help us all. Because when the farm prices go down, it really is catastrophic for farm families. But it doesn't show up at the marketplace to help consumers.
If your wife got an offer for a job that was very well paying and very exciting, but would take her, 1,000 miles away from your home, would you approve? Would you let her go? What would you say to her?
Well, Ms. Harvey, I had to face this question about 2 years ago when I decided to seek a new job in the White House. I asked my wife to go out away from me and campaign around the country, sometimes thousands of miles away. So far, that assignment has been very successful. And I might say this, it hasn't brought our family, but it's brought us closer together. And in bringing our family together and a mutual understanding of what our country is, I hope we can bring the country together in the next 4 years.
I have a question for Jimmy Carter. I'm a Jimmy Carter fan in the first place, and I'm going to vote for him. But what is he going to do for the minorities in the States, especially the Latin Americans?
Well, Mr. Maligan, everybody in our country in recent years has been hurt with unemployment, inflation, unbalanced budgets, mismanagement, crime increase. But I think it's accurate to say that quite often the minority groups get hurt worse. Those who don't speak English well, or those who happen to be black, or those who sometimes are elderly or who've been out of work for a long time, but many kind of minorities. Since you are Spanish-speaking, let me say, necesito su ayuda en mi campaña para presidente. Es gran oportunidad de cambiar este país. Necesito su ayuda.
I suppose the thing I'd want to know most from Governor Carter would be, does he really intend to keep his promises to change the atmosphere and the attitudes of our country?
Basically, we've gotten away from people, and we've gotten into government. That's why when you said, did I have a question, I said no, because I think there's too much government. And right now I think that politics in this country is mostly a game. That's basically it. I know this doesn't help you much, but that's my attitude.
I think that the American people have confidence in our democratic system. But I think the problem in the last few years has been that we've lost confidence in the bureaucrats and the politicians that are in that system. And what I'd like to know, Governor Carter, is what you could do as president, not just to give us confidence in the system again, but to give us reason to have confidence in our government again.
Like many other Americans, including the ones you've heard tonight, I've worked all my life. I know the government quite often is incompetent, insensitive, that the people don't feel that they're part of it, that they're turned off by their failures. A great nation can't stand still. Lately, we've been going backwards. More people out of work, inflation higher, mismanagement much more gross, discouragements on us almost every day, betrayal in high office. My strength and my support and my advice and my criticisms have come directly from people throughout this country for the last 22 months. And I know that we've got to have tough, competent management of government. I've worked all my life. I never have wasted my own money. I didn't waste the money of the taxpayers when I was governor of Georgia. We need to have someone going to Washington who's not part of that establishment, who hasn't been there for the last 25 or 30 years, to weed out unnecessary programs, to save money, but to give our people a sense that we have a government that is well run, that we can meet their needs, and that we also can let the people be part of the decision-making process. The election's almost here. I hope that none of you will be discouraged. It's not part of the American character to withdraw from a tough fight or to avoid trying to find an answer to a difficult question. We've got to pull ourselves together in a sense of unity. I hope to take office next the 20th to start leading this country toward the things that we want. The answers don't come easy. The promises that I've made have been very cautious, and I'm going to keep them. Because I believe that the people, the Congress, and I want the same things. But the election is right on us. That's when you and all the people of this country will have a part to play. So participate, help me if you will. And together we can restore the greatness that we've lost and prove once again that we still live in the most wonderful country on earth. Thank you very much.
The preceding pre-recorded program was paid for and authorized by 1976 Democratic Presidential Campaign Committee, Incorporated.
Each week, American History TV's Real America brings you archival films that provide context for today's public affairs issues. Up next, Behind the Freedom Curtain, released in 1957 by the Automatic Voting Machine Company, is an 18-minute film promoting the advantages of replacing paper ballots with voting machines.
I'm Michael R. Jackson, Courier-Dispatch. I'm on my way to the grand opening of what I consider to be the greatest show on earth. First time it's played our county. But we think when the curtain closes tonight, this will be quite a different place to live. I had a little something to do with it. That is, a man I wrote about in a series of news stories did. My beat's the county courthouse. And if you know anything about county courthouses, well, that's democracy's showplace. I don't have any free press passes for you, but you can get good seats if your credentials say USA. That probably gives it away. But we announce without apology, this is going to be a flag-waving production. If that be naive, let the sophisticates make the most of it. If there'd been more of it lately, this show would play to standing room only. However, there are plenty of seats. But it's curtain time. not necessarily the star in this particular show. I'd like to say he is, but wouldn't be quite true in this case. The stage of this show is that voting machine, right there. And the theme, getting them installed in this county. It didn't just happen. You see, you can legislate yourself all the laws you want about the right to vote. But whether you actually have an active electorate or not comes down, like everything else of consequence, to a matter of action on the part of a very few men and what kind of arrangements they make. In your community, it may be some other official like your councilman. In ours, it's the county commissioners who carry the assignment of seeing that there is a way and a means for every American to run his country between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on that first Tuesday in November. Now, although voting machines are over 60 years old and are already being used by about half the voters in America, our commissioners still had to sell the idea here. A lot of work, but they felt worth doing. They got me on their team to do my series of articles when Commissioner Miller told me about the ease and speed and economy of voting with machines over paper ballots. When the voter is properly qualified, the attending election official admits him to the machine. Mr. Citizen moves the operating lever to the right, which unlocks the machine and locks out the world. For the first time, the secret ballot is really secret. And there are over 19 1/2 centuries that I know of invested in achieving just that. The voter selects his candidates by turning down the voting pointers directly above the names of his candidates. Then he records and counts his own vote by returning the operating handle to the left. That's all there is to it. He does not hand any papers to any human beings. His vote is made and cast, untouched by other human hands or minds. And that's a long step up from tyranny. The ballot is right at the voter's eye level, easily read. And all offices and all candidates are at the same eye level. No candidate suffers by being placed in an unfavorable position. The commissioner won over service clubs all over the county whenever he addressed them by reminding them of the large number of voters who are disenfranchised every year at the paper ballot type polls by making mistakes. Busy people often, by habit, make check marks on the ballot in states where X's are required. They might as well have stayed home. That vote is a no vote. Doesn't count. Illegal. Other voters find that at the last minute they have accidentally voted for the wrong man, or they change their mind. Don't, lady? It doesn't count. Or, you know election pencils. Good try, sir. But this ballot will be thrown out. Or, in the multiple choice offices, errors are frequent. She's entitled to choose 5 state representatives, but she's marked 6. This is a no vote. Simple mistakes, yes, but out of every 1,000 people, some hurried, some nervous, some uninformed. How many do you think do it perfectly? The commissioner figured there's some excuse for being disenfranchised by tyranny or war or fear. Oh, yes, it can happen here. But not for well-intentioned mistakes, not in this age of the voting machine, which cannot make a check mark instead of an X, which does let you change your mind by simply pushing the pointer back up, which has no pencil to break or paper to tear, which will not let you vote for more than you're allowed. The pointer will not turn if you've cast all your votes. Questions and issues, if any, are placed up here on the top of the ballot. The pointers are marked yes and no, or for and against. The machine won't let you spoil your ballot by voting both ways. And when you're satisfied with your vote, a new privilege awaits you. You will register and count your own vote by returning this handle. Walk away knowing your ballot cannot be disqualified, thrown out, nor miscounted. It's already counted the moment you leave. Nor can the machine make a mistake. First off, it cannot be opened except by a key after sealing the machine, which halts all voting on that machine for the day. It looks complex, but it's not a complex mechanical action. It looks so because of the large number of voting units in it. But actually, each voting assembly has a straight mechanical linkage and a rugged action like this. And of course, voting machines are not a new idea. Many new functions have been added, of course, but basically they're 12 years older than the automobile. 1892. Their use has steadily increased until last year, in 35 states and territory of Hawaii, about half of our American voters voted by machine. Why? Why? Well, newspapers went after answers. So did the commissioner. And the first answer was, it's so fast and so easy. Just 3 simple steps. First, move the red operating handle to the right. Second, select your candidates. Third, throw the red handle to the left to count and record your own vote. Why else machine voting? Absolute secret balloting. We've had no trouble about that in this county, but we don't want any either. The commissioners understood about fear, that it's a very, very subtle thing. This voter's opinion is in the machine, not on any piece of paper which passes from hand to hand. Why else voting machines? The automatic voting machine absolutely eliminates the disenfranchisement which comes from mistakes, ballot mutilations, checks instead of X's, erasures, or voting for too many candidates. On machines, every vote that's cast is counted. The count is mechanically accurate. And of course, of interest to me, and well, 170 million others, I guess, is the fact that immediately after the last voter, the election results are available. These counters cannot be exposed during the voting day. Exposure automatically locks the machine against further voting. But once opened, the result is available right now. My paper can get the results, which means the people and the candidates and the radio and TV stations can get the results hours earlier. Just read the figures off the counters to the recorders. Then check the recorded figures back against the counters. Announce the results in 5 to 10 minutes. How about the good old days? Well, counting was a 5-hour job if things went smoothly. If not, well, then it was 5 days. But the mechanical counters cannot get tired, cannot get cranky, cannot forget. Why voting machines? Well, money. Voting machines vote more people much faster. Therefore, you can consolidate your precincts, sometimes even 2 for 1. Cuts in half your need for hard-to-find election workers. Madison, Wisconsin, for example, eliminated 170 election workers. And multiply 170 by a day's pay, and you see what kind of savings we're talking about. Plus, the counting takes a quarter of an hour as opposed to 3 to 6 hours. Fewer people, fewer hours equals fewer dollars. Not always, of course. But in our type count, yes. Then take your printing costs. Paper ballots require at least 1 ballot for every voter. Voting machines, 1 printed ballot per machine. And of course, save just one old-style county-wide recount, and your machines are nearly home free. But money wasn't chiefly on the commissioner's mind. Something else. The man who took the lead in it is a seasoned professional career politician, realistic, tough even, unemotional. But that's why he knew that democracy, as an idea and a practice, had to compete in this county like everything else for the respect and attention of our people who were pressing the clock hard every day. It has to compete against speed and motion, regrettably, even against America's second cup of coffee. Everything else in the county competes hard for the citizens' increasingly valuable time. Our churches were modernizing with parking lots he could get into faster. Our marketplaces were automating to compete for his time and his dollar. Our schools modernized to command his respect and his tax dollar. The tools which our average citizen uses every day in his job of work has become fantastically automatic and fast as industry moves to automation. And even his home life is automatic, modern. But the one place where the average citizen participated in the political system which made it all possible, no change. Democracy is the foundation. The heart of that democracy is the polls, which were still being run in our county the way they were when we held Inauguration Day on March the 4th. So the new president would have 3 months to ride his horse to Washington. The driving question on the commissioner's mind, can democracy compete with its right hand tied to a hitching post? His answer, in our county, is what I consider the greatest show on earth. It's bringing out the people. As the commissioner likes to say, we've really become one of the Freedom Curtain counties.
Tired of following 2016 campaign news? This election eve and election night, American History TV will travel back in time with our series Road to the White House Rewind. We'll bring you archival presidential election coverage, including victory and concession speeches and campaign films from the 1956 campaign of Dwight D. Eisenhower through the 2000 election between Al Gore and George W. Bush. That's Monday and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on American History TV on C-SPAN 3, providing context for today's public affairs issues.
The Library of Congress Packard Campus for Audiovisual Conservation in Culpeper, Virginia, preserves and provides access to the library's vast collection of films, television programs, radio broadcasts, and sound recordings. American History TV visited the Packard campus to learn about the earliest public affairs films, including U.S. presidents, the Spanish-American War, World War I, and the first ever political ad, created in 1912 by the Democratic Party.
My name is Mike Michon. I'm head of the Moving Image section here at the Library of Congress, the home of the largest collection of film and video in the world. Today we're at the Packard Campus for Audiovisual Conservation in Culpeper, Virginia, a facility that opened in the summer of 2007. It's dedicated to preserving our audiovisual heritage. One of my favorite films that we have in the collection is what we believe to be the very first political ad. It comes from 1912. And this is the race in which William Howard Taft is a Republican candidate, Woodrow Wilson is a Democratic candidate, and Theodore Roosevelt is running a Progressive Party, Bull Moose Party. The film is produced by the Democratic National Committee. It's called The Old Way and the New. And it opens up with this very rich, fat plutocrat who comes into his office where one of his flunkies is dutifully dusting off portraits of Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. They're grouped in this together as an example of the old way of doing things. And so he's, got lots of money and he's dispensing favors and there's all sorts of bribes and political corruption taking on. They are contrasted with the new way of doing things, represented by Woodrow Wilson, who's the champion of the common man. And the film actually ends with a plea for people to send $1 to the Democratic National Committee on behalf of the Woodrow Wilson campaign, because Woodrow Wilson is for the common man, Republicans are for the wealthiest 1%. Somehow those tropes have not changed in the last 100 years. We have 1.4 million items in the collection, so there are plenty of treasures out there to be discovered. And the great thing is, with new technology that we have, not only the ability to preserve these older films on newer film stock, but we have a lot more technology available to digitize the film and make them available for people. So we've known about the film, now we have ways of getting it out there for people to see.
Monday night on The Communicators, Craig Aaron, President and CEO of Free Press, and Jeffrey Eisenach, Director at the Center for Internet Communications and Technology Policy, talk about the technology issues that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have discussed on the campaign trail. Also, the top tech issues for Congress and the next administration to address. They're interviewed by technology reporter for the Morning Consult, Amir Nasser.
The key elements that interest me most are her commitment to really expand broadband access, and with a lot of talk about competition and bringing the benefits of broadband to all Americans. And then I think there's another strong theme that's running through around the idea of inclusive innovation. In other words, how do we make sure that the entire country, everyone, actually shares in the benefits of the internet economy?
Mr. Trump's policies are concerned. I think, there's a lot of sharing of goals and objectives. I think we all want to see the internet, the benefits of the internet be made available to all. I think we want to see more rapid innovation. I think we want to see lower prices. I think what Mr. Trump is saying is that the way to that, the path to those objectives is less regulation, lower taxation.
Watch The Communicators, Monday night at 8 Eastern on C-SPAN 2. With the Supreme Court back in session, we have a special webpage to help you follow the court. Go to cspan.org, select Supreme Court near the right-hand top of the page. Once there, you'll see the calendar for this term, a list of all current justices, and with Supreme Court Video on Demand, watch oral arguments that we've aired and recent C-SPAN appearances by Supreme Court justices at cspan.org.
Welcome to Tucson on